A man trying to write feminist material usually never works, and this is an example of that. Hey nerds, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing seasons 11 and 12 of American Horror Story, NYC, and Delicate. But before we get into that, I just want to thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Now let's get into this. I know I've been gone a minute, I'm sorry. I've been super busy, and also this entire last week I was sick. So yeah, that's why I sound like my dad right now. And that's also why I look like shit on bread. So for those of you that are new here, hi, how are you? So glad you're here. I should give you a little bit of context. So American Horror Story is one of my favorite shows ever. But like so many shows do, especially the ones that have like 18 million seasons, it starts to kind of fall off in a way, and American Horror Story has done that, and it started with season 10 double feature, and it's gone downhill since then. At least I think so, okay? And when I saw the promos for NYC and Delicate, I was already done at that point because I was so disappointed and let down by double feature. I didn't want to give it a chance, and it was hard because this is one of my favorite shows, and I was like, if this is gonna be like double feature, then I don't want it. But this past week, I finally watched both seasons, NYC and Delicate, and I'm going to talk about them. So yeah. Let's start with NYC. So if you don't know about American Horror Story, each season is a different theme. You know, starting from the beginning, you have Murder House, Asylum, Coven, Freak Show, Hotel, Roanoke, Cult, Apocalypse, 1984, double feature, NYC, and then Delicate. So we're on NYC, and it's kind of self-explanatory. New York City, that's where it's taking place. But more specifically, it's taking place in New York City, 1981. Now, I'm pretty sure you can kind of piece together what's going to be happening if you haven't seen it, and those of you who have, you know what it's about. Being that this is set in New York City in the 80s, it is going to cover the topic of HIV and AIDS, but we'll get to that in a minute. And right from episode 1, like the first 5 minutes of it, there was too much going on. It was moving way too fast between a sex club, a homicide, a new serial killer, an unidentified virus, gay and lesbian discrimination. It was cutting from each of those things within the first 5 minutes of the show, and I felt like I was being strangled. I was very overstimulated by it. I was like, when are we gonna slow down and like get to know people? But that first 5 minutes was very disorienting. Let's talk about the characters now. I just want to give a quick disclaimer. Most of these people are not very likable, at least not to me, because so we have two main-ish characters. Their names are Gino and Patrick. I'll start with Gino. So Gino is this very disgruntled gay man. He is a writer and reporter for this newspaper called The Native in New York City. I didn't like him at first because he seemed like a stick in the mud, but he grew to become one of my favorites later on. And he was the only reporter, like, you know, telling the rest of society what was going on in the LGBTQ plus community, well, at least pandering towards what's happening to the gay men. He really didn't write about anybody else in the community. I think I like his character development the most. He went from being very unenthusiastic and kind of bland, I guess you could say, or, you know, nonchalant. And he went from that to, you know, very loud and fighting for justice. And, you know, he decided he wasn't gonna take this laying down anymore, and seeing that switch was nice, so I like that for Gino. Then there's Patrick. He's a cop for NYPD, and he is also Gino's boyfriend, who is sort of kind of in the closet. I say sort of kind of because, you know, when he's not at work, he's just living his best gay life. And then when he's at work, he has to pretend, he has to cosplay as a straight man because he's scared of discrimination and also losing his job, which I understand. I understand that, especially back in 1981, I understand. To me, he was hard to read at first. Like, he seemed very indifferent. And then as his character started to develop throughout the show, I realized I didn't like him that much. It's because he's an unreliable narrator when it's like from his POV, and he's a big fat liar, you know. And then there's Adam. He's probably my favorite, for real. We meet him in the first episode, and he's with his best friend Sully, and then Sully goes missing, and it is Adam's entire mission, like throughout the duration of the show, is to find out what happened to his best friend. Adam is very committed and compassionate, and he just has very big emotions, and I love that about him. Then there's Theo. He is a very popular photographer, especially in the gay community. He's very uppity. Not uppity, but you know, he's very snobbish and avant-garde and all that bullshit. He purposely has his guard up until he meets Adam and gets to know him better. Then there's Sam. He's like some kind of art collector / agent, and he was dating Theo. All you need to know about Sam is that he's a terrible person. Then there's Fran, radical lesbian, 1 of 3. She's played by the same actress that played Judy in Pose, another one of my favorite shows, which was, also written by Ryan Murphy. I don't know if it's because I saw her in Pose first, but every time I look at that woman, every time she opens her mouth, I see and hear Judy. And I don't know if it's also because Fran and Judy are basically the same person but in different universes. Like, if you've seen both shows, tell me that's not Judy but in a different font. Maybe that's just me. I didn't know. Then we have Hannah. She is a doctor / scientist, and she stumbles upon that unidentified virus that I had mentioned a couple of minutes ago. And she can't quite pin what it is yet because it's so early in the stages of it, but she's trying to figure out what is this virus and where did it come from, and I'm sure you can guess what the virus is. Speaking of Hannah, I want to tell you something real quick. I want to bring something up. So there's this plot line where Fran and Hannah meet up, and Fran is telling her she thinks she knows where the origin of this virus started. She gives her this whole extensive backstory about experimentation and testing in the 1950s on Fire Island, which is where Hannah found it, in some deer, because all the deer were just dropping dead and stuff. And she was like, yeah, it's a conspiracy, this, that, and the third, you got to blow the lid off this thing, you know, tell the press, da-da-da-da-da. And Hannah's like, yeah, I'm with it. And then we never come back to that plot line. It just totally disappears. And we only see a little bit of it left, like towards the end of the show or the season, vaguely with Hannah's research. But I was just like, okay, what happened to blowing the lid off this shit? Like, what happened? Y'all just forgot that plot line. Y'all was gonna expose everything and nothing happened with it. They never tied up that loose end, and I was just like, okay. And we never saw what became of Hannah's research. But back to the characters. So next character on the list is Barbara, played by Leslie Gore. She joined the ensemble cast, like the new version of the ensemble cast, back on season 7. And she's always either played very mean, bitchy characters or vapid, spoiled characters, or a combination of the two. And in this role, this season, she shocked me because she was like playing a regular person who wasn't mean to everyone every 2 seconds. She was very sweet and a regular lady. So I was like, okay. Good job, Leslie. And then she reverted right back to that in season 12, but I'm not gonna talk about that yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. Oh, she's also Patrick's ex-wife. Drama. And then lastly, the last character that I really want to talk about, or like I feel like is worth highlighting, is Mr. Whiteley. He's a serial killer. I don't care about spoiling it. I don't care to dive into his his file because just watch this show. If you want to know more about Mr. Whiteley, just watch this show, because I'm not getting into that, okay? So now that I've talked about some of the characters, I want to talk about the feel of the show, specifically this season of NYC. This season felt very different from the previous ones, and I noticed this shift back when Double Feature came out. One, so all the seasons following after 1984, they like had a tone switch. Like, they're so serious. They try so hard to be serious and like deep, and the camp is gone. the camp is missing. American Horror Story used to thrive off of both gore, horror, and campiness, and the last 3 seasons just had an excessive absence of camp. And I also felt like this season was taking itself too serious, and it felt very heavy. And then another thing that I noticed was the way that it was filmed. So if you look back on like the earlier seasons of American Horror Story, you could tell it was filmed for TV, like, you know, filmed as a TV show, if that makes sense. But starting from Double Feature and following after that, it looks like it's more cinematic, if that makes sense. Like, just kind of compare the two and you'll see what I'm talking about. I felt like every episode I was watching was part of a movie or something because of the way it was filmed. That was something else that I noticed. I feel like that's maybe why these later seasons don't speak to me as much as the other ones, because they ain't trying to have fun no more, and then it's cinematic, so it looks more serious. Yeah, so I want to talk about some other details that jumped out at me. So from the get-go, I noticed the lack of people of color and women. Not to say that there aren't any at all, because there are, obviously, but there's a lack of women of color, women in general, and people of color in general. And like, they're there, but they're not an important piece of the plot. They're just kind of like on the side. And then if we do get, you know, a woman of color or a man of color or a person of color on the episode, they don't last long. Like, they either disappear off the screen and never come back, or they end up getting unalived. And it's just like, not this cast being mostly white men. And I'm kind of looking at Ryan Murphy sideways, because how is this the same person who wrote Pose? And that is like the most diverse cast I have seen in a while. Also showing that diversity, showcasing that diversity in the LGBTQ plus community in the same decade, in the same place and decade. I'm like, why did that not carry over? I know Pose is an entirely different show, but why leave the diversity over there? Why didn't you bring the diversity over to NYC? And me personally speaking, I think that NYC is one of the most diverse places on the earth. And I'm just like, where's the diversity? It's diversity deficient. And the only like person of color that was in the main cast was Theo. That was it. That was also a man. Like, we barely had any female perspective this season. Being that most of the cast were, you know, men, this show heavily lacked in female perspective. We got like tinges and tastes of it when it was focused on Fran or Hannah, or a little bit on Barbara, but it never went further than, you know, surface level deep. And we didn't get to explore that, because it went straight back to the damn men's. Speaking of Pose, I saw a couple of parallels watching NYC. I saw the parallels in when the guys went to Fire Island for a vacation, and when the girls went on vacation in season 2. I saw the parallels in the hospital, you know, a loved one being visited by their friend or their lover, their family. I saw that parallel, and the hospitals were eerily similar. Eerily similar. I feel like these shows took place at the same time, but in different universes. Or probably the same one, because this was like, what, 2-3 years before the timeline of Pose started. I'm just spitballing here, don't mind me. And I also saw a parallel with the protesting. Also, Patti LuPone is back. Queen legend. She was also in Pose. She played a bigot. And then we also saw her in season 3, Coven, and she was also a bigot. She's great at playing bigots. But in this season, she's a bathhouse singer. and she's more like in line with the girlies. So yeah, different character base for her. That just made me think of something. Living in a post-COVID world and like looking back on stuff that happened years and years before, bathhouses were a real thing. Look up what a bathhouse is, like the general layout and, you know, purpose of a bathhouse. I'm just like, people were getting naked in public like that and getting in the same water and making people soup. I mean, I'm just like, I guess that's the same thing as a public pool, except everybody's naked. I don't know. It was bothering me. I was like, okay, this was a real thing and people did this for real back in the day. I felt like this season was trying to be so groundbreaking and deep, and I was like, please stop, like just tell the damn story, stop trying so hard. And as a cis heterosexual woman, I feel like I am underqualified or unqualified to even speak about the imagery of the LGBTQ plus community and what these characters were going through. I can do as much research as I want. I can be the loudest, proudest ally that I want, but I will never truly understand what it's like. Especially people who were alive during that time and in the early stages of HIV and AIDS, like not knowing what this thing is and how, you know, watching your friends drop like flies right next to you, it's scary. I've spoken about HIV and AIDS. It's time to address the big elephant in the room. So there's this character in the show called Big Daddy. Here he is. He real thick and swole. So, you know, 2 episodes in, I'm like, okay, are there 2 serial killers out on the loose right now? Like, you got Mr. Whiteley and his shenanigans, and then you got people being abducted by Big Daddy. So I'm like, there's 2 serial killers. And then, of course, I finished the show. I got to the end of it. I was like, oh my God. It all clicked for me. If you haven't seen the show, spoilers, but Big Daddy is supposed to symbolize HIV and AIDS. He is the personification of the disease. Much like the Angel of Death in season 2, like she was the Grim Reaper, who made a cameo, by the way, in this season. She came back. She tried to get one of the characters, but she didn't get them. Back to what I was saying. I finally realized it when Sam was like on his way out. He was dying, and then Big Daddy came up and she was trying to run from him, and Big Daddy caught up to him, and he was sick with the virus. And that's when I realized what Big Daddy represented, because he only got the people, like, you know, took people who were already sick. So that makes sense. I said, oh, okay, I get it. I get that part. Okay. Also, side note. So I don't know if I wasn't like paying attention for one part of the show. Like I zoned out one part. When Sam took the mask off of Big Daddy, I was confused, and I wasn't shocked. I was confused because we've been trying to figure out this man's identity, right? Because we thought he was like a flesh and bones man. When we're in Sam's dying psyche and he takes off the mask and it's that guy, I'm like, are we supposed to know who this is? Did I miss something? I'm like, who is this man? Who is this man? Like him right here? I was like, who is this? Am I supposed to be shocked? I don't know who this man is. So I was like, did I miss a part, or did I not pay attention at one part? Because who is this? And then I was also confused because I was like, since Big Daddy represents AIDS and HIV as a whole, is this his true identity according to Sam? And does he look different to others, like when they take the mask off? Just the thought that I had, I was like, okay.
Hey, my voice is halfway gone, so I sound a little weird, but I just thought of something. So I do think at one point in time that Big Daddy was an actual person, because how did Theo photograph him? You know what I'm talking about? How does he have a photograph, a tangible, real life, physical photo of Big Daddy? So maybe he was a real person. Maybe he was a real person, and then he became that omen. He became the Grim Reaper. in this situation, in this context of the show. I forgot all about that. Okay, back to the video.
Speaking of which, let's talk about the ending real quick. Did not care for the ending at all. It wasn't because Gino and Patrick died. It just felt rushed. And then, sitting through this whole season, through that psychological and emotional turmoil, I'm like, this is how we're ending it? And then usually when it's a finale, and this was a 2-parter finale, right? Those are the longest episodes in this season. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just like, don't you get like an extra 20 to 30 minutes to really tie up all the loose ends and end the story? That didn't happen. And then especially like the very last scene where Adam is stepping up to the podium to like speak at Gino's funeral, and it just cuts off before he even gets a word out. I'm like, I don't like these cliffhanger ass endings. It makes, like, I ain't got no closure. I ain't got no closure for real. That's it? That's all we get? That's all we get? And we didn't even get like longer episodes. One of them was like 40 minutes and the other one was like 32 minutes or something like that. But if I had to rate this season, like, I don't know how to feel about this season for real. If I had to rate this season, I would give it like a 3 out of 10. It just did not do it for me. Maybe I need to watch it a second time through so I can see the light. But until then, no. I just also want to bring this up. I know it's hard to bring in a campy element when you're talking about something as serious as the AIDS epidemic. And sometimes camp doesn't have a place in horror or serious topics such as AIDS. So I understand that. I wasn't trying to sound insensitive, but I'm saying like overall, like these last 3 seasons of American Horror Story ain't no camp. But yeah, that's how I feel about NYC. So now let's talk about Delicate. I don't know how to feel about this one either. I remember seeing the promo for this for the very first time, and I was like, okay, I see pregnant women and spiders. What are we looking at? And then also the title threw me off, Delicate. I'm like, it's never been like, what? I'm like, what is that? How is that a theme? I'm like, how does that coincide? And then turns out Delicate comes from the title of a book that this season was adapted from. So the book adaptation is called Delicate Condition, and the season revolves around, basically, it's a different version of that book. I like that aspect of it. I think this was the first season where, it wasn't an original story, like it was adapted from one that already existed. I thought that was pretty cool. Let's talk about the characters now. So we have our main character, Anna, played by Emma Roberts. She's like this B-list actress trying to make it even bigger. She is busting her ass for all the nominations and recognition, honey. And she is also having some trouble conceiving. But when she does, she feels like there is something dark coming after her and her baby. Then we have Siobhan, okay, played by Kim Kardashian. Let it be known that I have never liked Kim Kardashian, and I tried to like put that aside so my opinion of her acting wouldn't be biased. She's not very great. But let me describe her character to you. Siobhan is Anna's publicist. She's very cutthroat and cold-hearted. She don't play no games. She's that type of, character. And this was also one of the main reasons that I avoided this season, because I'm like, if you have to bring Kim Kardashian in, like, how desperate could you be for the ratings? As I watched the show, I was like, she's just playing herself. Like, I struggled to find the difference between Kim Kardashian and Siobhan, because that's the same lady. That's the same person. I feel like Siobhan is who Kim would be if she was doing her mom's job, like being a momager. That's what it gave. Then we have Dex. Stupid name, but this is Anna's husband. He's like some art dealer, gallery owner, hybrid. It literally doesn't matter what he does because he's the worst. Do y'all remember that video I did last year on the worst tropes in horror, and I was talking about the asshole husband trope? Dex is a prime example of this trope. He is the worst. He blames, Anna's meds for her talking crazy or what, talking crazy. He blames the pregnancy, and then he's just like, he don't listen, and he don't want to listen. Like, anytime Anna tries to tell him something, he just disregards it. He don't care. Like, ugh, he got on my nerves expeditiously. I didn't like him from jump. Then we have Nicolette, played by my girl, Michaela J. Rodriguez. I loved her since Pose. I love her still. She's the house manager of the home that Anna and Dex take their little sabbatical in. Yeah, she's very sweet, attentive, a little robotic, and we'll find out why, but that's Nicolette. Oh, quick note, okay. So there's a character in this season named Talia, and I got so pissed when I learned a little more about this character, because this is what always seems to happen in any form of media, whether it's literature, TV, or movie. Whenever there's a Talia, it doesn't matter what spelling it is, what variation of spelling it is. She's either depicted to be the villain and be just mean and heinous and conniving, or she's offed within minutes of the book starting or the movie starting or the TV show starting. And I'm like, I'm tired of the slander, damn it. I'm tired of the slander. I ain't met one Talia in mass media fiction that isn't mean or that doesn't get unalived or offed in the first 5 minutes. I'm like, y'all need to fix this. Yeah, Talia in this show, spelled Talia, she is a cunt. And not the good kind. But those are all the characters that are worth like highlighting, I guess. So the theme of this season is surrounded around, it's like misogyny versus femininity. And speaking of the misogyny part, it's just like all the men in this show, they don't have no type of respect for Anna. They put her down, they minimalize her feelings, they don't believe her when she's telling them some real stuff is going on. It's tiring and frustrating. Like, the asshole husband trope leaps onto each of the men that we see. And the femininity kind of trying to counter that in the show is related to infertility and finding women who, you know, went through the same thing, finding comfort, finding solace, and then taking back your, you know, your power as a woman, reinstating your power as a woman. And after doing some more research on Delicate Condition, I found out that Ryan Murphy butchered the story. Turns out the ending in the show is drastically different from the ending in the book. He literally villainized Siobhan's character. And from what I saw on multiple Reddits and book reviews online, Siobhan wasn't an evil person to begin with. Yeah, I went ahead and found like all the Reddit boards and other book reviews that kind of gave a little more context on that. But I much prefer the book's ending to whatever Ryan did in the show. Speaking of ending, that was also a cliffhanger. It was like, leave it to your own interpretation type bullshit. Well, I don't want that. I want concrete closure. Not every ending has to be left up to interpretation. That gets old after a while. And the original story of Delicate Condition seems interesting enough, and I would like to read it for myself to formulate a more concrete opinion on it. But until then, even though the original story was written by a woman, you can tell that Ryan made some changes, him being a man and trying to write, you know, a feminist story. A man trying to write feminist material usually never works, and this is an example of that. There would be lines in this show that the woman would say, and I'm just like, okay, a man wrote that. Or a man wrote this scene, or, you know, talking, the way they talk about sex or their bodies. Women don't talk like this. And it's just like, it made me cringe, because you can tell when something is written by a man and it's supposed to be through a woman's perspective. Like, there was this one part where Siobhan was like, I'm Siobhan Corbin and I make my own rules, or something like that. I'm like, okay, that's so cringe. And then they had like this whole montage of Anna doing some kind of reel or commercial or something. It gave Activia, it gave Humira, it gave one of those commercials about medicine. That's what it gave. It gave Ozempic, it gave, girl, it was written by a man, and you could tell. And I've had to rate this one. Now, I kind of like this one better than NYC, not by that much, because I still, no. Especially the last 2 episodes. If I had to rate this one, I'd probably give it a 4 out of 10, because that one wasn't this great either. Sorry about it. You've been bringing back Emma Roberts, didn't fix it, because you had Kim Kardashian in it, but I digress. Yeah, I just hope, if there is another season, if we're getting another season of American Horror Story, I hope Ryan Murphy reverts back to his original formula of horror, gore, and camp, because this one wasn't campy either. This one wasn't campy at all. Like, it was just straight up serious. And I was like, oh, I'm not having fun here. But yeah, I hope if we're lucky enough to get another season, like, Ryan, revert back to your original formula, because we out here hungry. We hungry. We miss that. We need that. But yeah, that's how I feel about NYC and Delicate. So that concludes our video for today. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like. If you made it to the end of this video, comment a black heart and a spider. Yeah. And subscribe if you want to. I'll see y'all on the next go round. Okay, bye.